Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to AI Would Agree. Very special guest today, a good friend of mine who's got his own podcast. He's very well established in the recording world, but also in the coaching and development world and customer experience. So pleased to bring to the show Rob Dwyer. Hi, Rob.
Hey, how are you, Paul?
Great to have you along. Big shoes to fill in now.
Oh, you know what? I'm so excited to join you. You and I connected quite a while back, and I love learning from you, and I just try and hope to put out some stuff that other people can learn from as well.
100%, yeah, and it's great to be in touch with somebody else who has such a passion for learning and development and empowerment of people as well. I think we both come at that from very different angles. Obviously, I've got my retail background as to where I came into it, and you've done it from the contact center side of things. But it's nice to meet almost a kindred spirit across the pond in America. Tell me, Rob, like, how did you get into coaching and development first? Well, I think we'll tackle the obvious first, and then
Yes.
talk about Star
So
Wars.
a long time ago, in what seems like another lifetime ago, I was actually in the mortgage industry here in the States. I started out in brokerage, so retail, and eventually I got into the wholesale side of it, so B2B. And I was a sales manager. And so there was a lot of coaching and developing going on there. And then 2008 happened. And I think all of us of a certain age remember what happened in 2008, really across the globe.
Mhm.
And I realized that I needed to find something else. Like I could stay in that business, but I wanted to find something else. And I had moved to St. Louis. My wife had gotten a job here in St. Louis. That's where I live today, St. Louis, Missouri. And really, I was looking just for something temporary with insurance for my kids. And the contact center was hiring, and it was work from home. And so I just was like, well, I guess I'll do this now for a little bit. This was not a brilliant career move on my part. I didn't think at the time. It was literally just, I need a job.
Yeah.
And I learned very quickly that this was an industry where you could move up very quickly. And so then I got into training, and I got the opportunity to start doing leadership development for that company. And it was a global BPO. And so I was traveling, I was doing leadership development virtually as well, all over the globe. And so that was really exciting. And so that's how I really got into it.
Awesome. It's a great story, Rob. I think, yeah, there's probably quite a few people out there that can sympathize. I think retail and contact centers intersect on quite a few different levels. And it's safe to say that nobody ever intentionally, very rarely, set out to be in either of those sectors. We kind of fall into them. And I've been fortunate enough to fall from one into the other. It's another interesting experience that I'm sure I've shared with you before. So, Rob, like you've got your own podcast. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So Next in Queue is my podcast, and it is really just about meeting new people. It focuses on people in the CX and the contact center industries, and it's an opportunity for me to learn. Quite honestly, I get to meet people that have really way more experience than I do, and have done a lot of things that I don't know a lot about. And I know that I get to learn from it, but at the same time, all of my listeners and or viewers, depending on how they're watching it, they get to learn something from it. So that to me is just a really exciting way to kind of share the experiences that other people are getting, um, and kind of spread that knowledge and that expertise around so that other people can get the benefit from it.
It's a good show. Like I remember when you started. It's not even been going that long. It's probably about 4 or 5 months, is it?
Yeah, September of last
Yeah.
year is when it started. Yeah, so I'm in my second quarter of the show, and it's a weekly show, so it's a lot of work, but it's also just a lot of fun.
Yeah, agreed. And it's similar sort of reasons as why I started LinkedIn Live with the AI Would Agree series. It's part of my job is speaking to a lot of people on a weekly basis, and like people can be both like surprising in two separate ways. So people can be quite surprisingly open to networking and conversations and just see where things take us. And a lot of other people want to know in advance what it is that you're going to be talking to them about. Um, and that's a really hard thing to kind of voice when let's call out the white elephant in the room. 50% of the time, I'm looking for business opportunities, but
Yeah.
I'm not doing it for the business reasons. That's a side effect of having the networking conversations. But it's quite hard to tell somebody, well, yeah, I want to kind of introduce you to me and what I do, and then let's take it from there. People can be quite suspicious. So I find that actually that talking about LinkedIn Live and the show is actually quite a good icebreaker for people. I want to talk to you about the show and see what might be there, and like, let's chat. And you get some fantastic conversations as a result of it. And our relationship's one of those conversations that kind of grew out of one of those, and
Yeah.
it's been good to get to know you over the last few months and see where things have gone. Um, Rob, it's clear to see if anybody's kind of watching this rather than listening to it that you're a big Star Wars and a big Legos fan. Um, Tell me more. Like, is that something that drives you on a daily basis, or is it kind of a Christmas time hobby as it is for a lot of us? Or
Yeah, so, two things, right? I mean, there's an intersection of two things that I really like. So Star Wars, like, there are lots of Star Wars fans out there, and I think it's, it's a series that is it's a it's ultimately designed to be for kids, right? But it deals with really serious themes, and I think that it's a collection of media that doesn't treat kids with kid gloves. It's willing to go out and talk about really serious stuff, whether that's pain and loss, whether that's politics, whether that's war, and all of the things that go along with that. It's a way that you can learn about those things in an entertaining way and an inspirational way. So I think there are just a ton of Star Wars fans out there. Um, the Lego thing, I think Lego also geared for kids, right? It's a kid's toy, but it's a kid's toy that is so much more than a kid's toy. Lego is about solving problems, and it's about solving problems within certain constraints. So today when I build Lego, a lot of it's sets, like you can see behind me, and it's just set up and displayed. But when I was a kid, Lego was my favorite toy, right? Had this big burlap sack of Lego that my grandmother had given me. I had like Campbell's soup logo across it, and you would just dump out the sack in the middle of the floor. And then
yeah,
it was like, okay, let's start building. And you have maybe this idea of what you want, this idea of this end goal in mind, but that end goal is constrained by the pieces that you have at any given time. And so maybe you're trying to build this cool car, this spaceship, or this building, whatever the case may be. And you have it in your mind's eye, like, this is what I want this to be. But you only have the pieces that you have. And so you have to figure out creative ways to use different pieces. You have to be imaginative, but you also have to solve problems. Go, okay, well, I used to have this cool piece, but it broke and I can't use it anymore, right? It's deprecated now. I can't use that. And so I have to figure out another way to do this, or I have this cool idea for this. And maybe I've seen some pieces that I don't own, but how can I do something very close to that? And I think that's what business owners are always trying to do, right? Those people that are working in particularly small and medium businesses, like, they are always trying to solve problems, but there are always certain constraints. You see these shows like Lego Master, like that's not small business. They have every piece, they have a bazillion pieces. They can build whatever they want. Time is their only enemy. The reality is, for most people, they don't have all of those pieces, and businesses don't have all the money to like buy every tool out there. Like they have to work with certain guidelines in place. And I think Lego is a toy that teaches you that as a kid, and there's a huge value to that. So, and then, today, right, I can build the Beatles or I can build Star Wars, and that has its own value. But it's different than what it was when I was a kid.
I think that's, yeah, I like that. Obviously my son's 4 now, so he's very much into Lego, very much into, I mean, I quite enjoy building the Lego Technic kits, with all the
Yeah.
gears and they're much more of a challenge. I'm not a creative person. I'm a doer. I'm not a creative person. So I've struggled to come up with how to build those kits myself. But me and him, quite often spend more time looking for the right brick than we do actually building what it is that we're trying to build between us when we're just using imagination. And it's
Yeah.
great to see him building his skill set with that and see how he develops what it is that he's trying to come out with. But like, I think you're absolutely right. I think there's an element in that, both for parents and for businesses, in that, I was listening to the book Grit by Angela Duckworth. It's a brilliant book, and if you haven't read
Yeah.
it, you haven't heard it, absolutely go out there and have a listen to it. And it talks about the idea of how grit is developed, and how, the common phrase is what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And it's technically it's inaccurate, because it's not quite complete. It's what doesn't kill you and you learn how to resolve makes you stronger. And it's that
Mhm.
it's that's the key to it, is that success at the end is what makes it sweet, and what ignites your brain to want to suffer more of those challenges, to solve those challenges. So I think anybody who's working within a business and you're kind of thinking about your childhood and you're a big fan of Lego, that's why you can do what you can do. It's a big reason for it in my eyes, was that kind of thinking about things and figuring out how to solve them. You're right. If you've got all the tools in the world, you become lazy and kind of and bloated with it all, and it removes a lot of the challenge from doing it. Do you think that people leadership is very similar in that respect then, Rob? Because obviously that's where a lot of your passion is, isn't it, in developing people and empowering them?
Yeah, I think the big connector is that it's all about skills, right? Skills and attitude. So leadership is about learning different skills. Like you hear the phrase a lot, right? That person's a born leader. I don't buy into that. No one's a born leader. They have learned skills along the way, and maybe it looks effortless. And so you look at someone and go, oh, that person's a born leader. But anyone can lead if they have the attitude, the desire to learn the skills, and then they work on applying those skills and get better at it. And I think, if you're, whether it's playing with Lego or you're learning a sport, whatever the case may be, right? These are all skills, and they're skills that we can hone. And so when I look at leadership and coaching in particular, like coaching someone is really an application of very specific skills, and it's understanding when to apply those skills. It's no different than a football player on the pitch, to use uh, to
Soccer
use
player.
the English terms, the proper English terms. We don't have football players on the pitch on this side of the pond, but right, knowing when I want to execute a header versus I'm going to try and bounce the ball off my chest, or I'm going to do something really crazy like a bicycle kick. Like all of those skills are learned, and it's about understanding, okay, when is this particular thing going to be most effective to achieve the goal in And in football, it's literally a goal. But in coaching, you're trying to achieve a goal to make progress, to move someone forward. And so you learn a lot of different skills. And then it's just understanding, when do I apply this particular skill to have the greatest impact? And that's
Yeah.
all there is to it. But there's a lot of learning that goes with that. It's not natural. You have to learn all these different skills and then understand when to apply them.
It's a great point, and it kind of feeds back into the whole deliberate practice side of things. It's not good enough just being a coach or coaching people and assuming that you'll get better. It's understanding the outcomes of those coaching sessions and how that person's developed over time, and practicing the coaching in a way that encourages you to come outside of your box and get better at it each time. Because anybody can go run around the park. It doesn't make you a triathlete. It doesn't make you a marathon runner. Like, if you go run around the park every day for 5 days a week for 5 years, you'll be great at that run, but you haven't actually gotten any better unless you set yourself targets and goals to get with that. So that's, I like that analogy, Rob. I guess for me, what would you say would be the most important skill you'd see in a coach? What for you indicates that
Mm.
somebody's got that potential within them, even if they're not doing the role already?
Yeah, I think the most important thing is, honestly, that someone who is willing to learn and has that desire to learn. So there are lots of people that maybe have the capability, but not the desire. And so they find themselves right there comfortable. They stay in their comfort zone. They do whatever their role is. And then you see people that are always trying to get out of their comfort zone to learn new things. Like, if you're willing to voluntarily get out of your comfort zone and you want to learn, then that tells me that, right, it's just a matter of, hey, do these skills interest you? Is this something that you're interested in? And if so, we can go down that path. And I think, for the most part, that's where you find your leaders, are the people that are willing to get out of their comfort zone on their own. And if they're willing to do that, then they're probably have a ton of potential to be leaders.
I think a close second for me would probably be to have a curiosity about people. And it's
Hmm.
something that took me a long time to realize that I had. Um, I joke about this a lot at home. I've been around and done a lot of different jobs. I've done everything from selling kitchens in person with a demo bag, right? Taking the demo bag in my old car, tipping up at people's houses and trying to sell kitchens to retired couples and all sorts of, like, I hated that. Awful experience. I've worked in contact centers. I've worked in one end of retail to the other. I've been a volunteer police officer. But the one common theme throughout it all was I was curious about why people do what they do, and how can I have an impact on their life that improves their life. And it took me till I was 38 to realize this. Like, even just to a basic level, to understand that that's what drove me forward. But I must admit, weight off my shoulders when I realized that that was the case, and that's why I'd done all the jobs that I'd done, because I just pictured myself as being a jack of all trades and a master of none, and I couldn't understand how everything stitched together. And then that one morning, like, and I don't think I'll ever forget it. That one morning I was just out walking, and it flicked the switch for me, and I was like, that's why I do everything that I've done. So I think self-awareness and curiosity of people come across second and third for me, to understanding how good coaching. Like, it's hard, isn't it? Kind of trying to pick who a coach should be or who a leader should be based on the role that they've done before. Have you got any sort of gems that you've
Yeah.
noticed through the years?
So one of the things that I would say is, I think that curiosity that you're talking about is part of that getting out of your comfort zone. Like,
Mhm.
people who are not curious about things or people, those are people who want to stay in their comfort zone. So I think you and I are looking at two sides of the very same coin potentially, because I agree that curiosity is important, but it's that curiosity that gets you to say, well, I want to learn about this now, or I want to learn about that now.
Mhm.
As far as picking people, again, I firmly believe that if you pick people that have that desire, that they can become good coaches with the right acquisition of skills. That's really what it boils down to. Are they necessarily going to end up being the best coach you've ever seen? I think again, you can go back to any sport. I say this, my Jayhawks, for your audience, they probably have no idea what that is, but it's the beginning of March Madness here. It's college basketball season here. I have a strong affinity to my alma mater, which is the University of Kansas. And like those players reach the often the very pinnacle of that using those skills, right? And there are very few people that can reach kind of that pinnacle of being able to apply skills, but that doesn't mean that you can't be really, really good. Like the average even walk-on college basketball player is better than the average Joe who has never played college basketball, because they've, even though they, rarely get to see the floor, they are way better than you think they are. And if you apply that same rigor to whatever skill that you're working on, you can get really, really good. And so I think when you're picking people, it's about, do you have the right mindset and the desire to learn? And if you have that, the rest we can work on. It may take longer to work on certain things that are don't feel natural to you, but we can still work on it.
I like that. I like that. And I think there's a certain amount of setting expectations um, prior to that happening, and having a certain level of honesty with the team as well. Because I've seen it many, many times where, somebody's been promoted, and two ways really. One, like, you've promoted the best performer at the team and they've turned out to be an absolute disaster as a leader. And likewise, you've promoted somebody who wasn't the best performer, and all of a sudden the rest of the team are around you querying, what on earth are you doing? Why have you promoted that girl or that guy? Because, like, I'm better at my job than they'll ever be. Well,
Mhm.
that might be true, but let's see what happens at the next level, and having those honest conversations saying, here's where you need to improve to your expectations to get where you need to go.
Yeah, and a lot of it boils down to motivation. You see this in sales all the time. Like really good salespeople do not necessarily make really good managers or leaders. And part of it is about what motivates them. And that doesn't mean they can't be, but it's often like if they get promoted into that role, it's not actually what they enjoy.
No, it's
Like
miles away from what they enjoy. Yeah.
yeah, so it really is important to understand, what really motivates people. And in sales, you see this mistake all the time, and you can still learn from someone that wasn't a master. And again, you see this in sport all the time. Like some of these best coaches in any sport, they played the game, but they may not have been all-stars or at the top. That doesn't mean that you can't learn from them as a top performer within your sport.
Mhm.
Their skill set may not have been the physical part of it, but it could absolutely be the mental part of it or the preparation part of it, all of those things that go into it. And so I think it's important to recognize that a lot of the things that we see in things like sport really do translate. It's not the same, but you can see how those concepts work when you translate them to the business world.
Cool. And the last couple of minutes before we wrap up, so we've got about 5 minutes left of the show. Next question for you, Rob, is how do you see technology assisting with that development of people and an empowerment of people going forwards?
Yeah, I think there is a lot of opportunity for technology to identify where the skill gaps are. I know that when I first started doing leadership development in the contact center specifically, right, we focus a lot on agent development. That's your front line. These are the people talking to your customers all the time. They really are what makes the business run. But they take 8+ hours worth of phone calls every single day. And as a supervisor, you've got a team, you can't possibly listen to them all. So understanding where your people need help can be a daunting task, in addition to all the other things that we ask supervisors to do in a contact center. What we're seeing now with speech analytics and AI and machine learning is really we can quickly identify where those gaps are, and so that I can understand as that frontline supervisor how I can skill up my agent so that they can perform even better. And that's what supervisors spend a lot of time on. Like that's the whole like quality assurance role in the contact center is someone just listening to phone calls to go, oh, well, okay, they don't know how to do this.
Yeah.
And it used to be you'd have entire teams dedicated to that. And now you can just have AI go in and listen to every single call, do it in real time, and push out results to tell you this is really where your opportunities lie. And so I can go spend my time coaching instead of spending my time listening and trying
Yeah.
to figure out what I need to coach on.
I think, yeah, for me, there's probably one step beyond that as well in terms of, and it's the bit that I think a lot of people forget about when they look at those sorts of conversations, is that you get promoted into a leadership position and you're a coach. I've spoken about this before on the show. Everybody's probably bored to death of me talking about it now. But that doesn't instantly make you a good coach. And even
No.
coaches who've been coaching for, and when we talk coaching here, is there's various types of coaching, performance feedback and what have you. It's roughly the same skill set, but how you deliver it's very different. But it's an ongoing process. You don't finish learning how to be a leader or a coach. And for me, having technology that can highlight, actually, you've had 15 conversations this week. That's great. You've hit your KPI that the business wants to measure. But actually, there was only 12 of those that delivered good results. The other 3 conversations that you had, the metrics stayed the same or they went down. Like, what's going on with those? Oh, now I can hone in on that side of things. And that for me is really powerful, because if I'd had that gift, and that's really what it is. It sounds corny to say that, but it's a gift to be able to have that information in my back pocket, to know that that's where my weakness is, and I can now deliberately practice and get better at that. That's a really powerful feedback.
Yeah, and I think on top of that, the biggest mistake that I think a lot of organizations make is that the coaches, the frontline coaches, aren't getting coached. Like you can't just promote someone who's never been in that role and just say, okay, well, now you're a supervisor, go forth and do whatever it is you're supposed to do. Yeah, I've got to, number one, teach you those skills. And then I have to, just like we do with agents, have to continually work on honing those skills with you, right? The greatest athletes in the world still have coaches.
Yep.
And we shouldn't expect that we can just put someone in a role and just say, here you go. We still need to coach them. And you're right, having that data on what they're doing that is successful and understanding those gaps then helps that next level of coaching be even more effective.
I think that probably goes all the way up into senior leadership as well. You know, like it's
Does.
hard as a first line coach to know that your next level up of management aren't being coached on anything. And it starts to feel like a hygiene factor that I'm getting coached. I must be doing something wrong because these guys don't get coached. And actually, they probably are getting coached. You just don't see it because they don't make a song and dance about it, and they're not open and transparent about what coaching they're getting. You don't need to know what their coaching is, but for me to know that my manager's getting coached the same as I'm getting coached makes me feel like we're on a level playing field, which makes me put more effort and thought into what I'm doing because I'm not on my own. Like everybody's part of the support thing, and it's moving it away from being that stick to hit people with. I hate that. Like it's not a stick to hit people with. It go back to the words again. It's a gift. It's a
Yeah,
positive thing. It should be.
it is. You know, one of the coolest things that I've ever been a part of is seeing um, 3 different levels of coaching go on. So it's an agent and a coaching session with their supervisor, which is being observed by the next supervisor, which is being observed by the next supervisor. And like one by one, people leave and like there's this coaching session. So that the agent has their coaching session and then they leave, and then the supervisor and then their supervisor, they have a coaching session, and then that frontline supervisor leaves, and then the next two, they have a coaching session. And so you see all this coaching going down the entire way, and so everyone's having that opportunity to think about how they executed, what they did really well, and what they can do even better next time to improve performance. And that's where you see a ton of growth. And you're right, that agent that comes into that at the very beginning, when they see that structure, they go, wow, everybody gets coached around here. And they're so much more receptive to it, because then it's not, oh, I'm not performing well. That's just what we do.
Yeah. And I think, probably I'm going to wrap up there, but I'll leave with the thoughts that, a lot of people are now, and I'm sure it's going through their heads, like, where on earth did they get the time to spend that much time coaching people? Because that's a long session, right? But
Yeah.
ultimately, my feedback to them is that's what technology is there for. It's not there to get rid of people. That time that you freed up by helping your QA team get to the 2% of calls that they'd normally QA, well, that's the time there, right there, that's saved for you. So think about that when you think about the automation and technology that can help you. That's the sorts of things that you could be putting your time into rather than raking back the margin.
Spot on.
Interesting. Thanks for coming along, Rob. Really enjoyed the conversation. It's good to have you again.
Yeah. Same, Paul. It's been great.
Thanks for watching, everybody at home. And if you're not watching this live and you're watching this back later on, feel free to add some comments on the post. Again, if there are any questions or things you'd like to ask either myself or Rob, our books are open as such. Feel free to put the questions in the comments, and we'll do our best to answer them as soon as we can for you. Thanks for coming along to the show, Rob, and thanks everybody for joining us. Bye bye.
Yeah, appreciate it.